Hello, everyone. Got a few dirty jokes for you today.
So, last Christmas, my mother-in-law was staying with us for the holidays. One afternoon, she put on her coat and grabbed the car keys off the counter. My wife asked, "Where are you headed?" She replied, "I'm going to the cemetery." I smiled and said, "Fantastic, but who's bringing the car back?" So 4 of Santa's elves got sick, and the trainee elves could not produce toys as fast as the regular ones. So Santa began to feel the pre-Christmas pressure. Then, Mrs. Claus told Santa her mother was coming to visit, which stressed Santa even more. He went to harness the reindeer. He found that 3 of them were ill and 2 others had jumped the fence and were out to heaven knows where. When he began to load the sleigh, one of the floorboards cracked. The toy bag fell to the ground, and all the toys were scattered. Frustrated, Santa went into the house for a glass of cider and a shot of rum. He went to the cupboard and discovered the elves had drunk all the cider and hidden the rum. In his frustration, he accidentally dropped the cider jug, and it broke into hundreds of little glass pieces all over the kitchen floor. He went to get the broom and found the mice had eaten all the straw off the end of it. Just then, the doorbell rang, and an irritated Santa marched to the door, yanked it open, and there stood a little angel with a great big Christmas tree. The angel said very cheerfully, "Merry Christmas, Santa. Isn't this a lovely day? I have a beautiful tree for you. Where would you like me to stick it?" And so began the tradition of the little angel on top of the Christmas tree. So the teacher asked young Patrick Murphy, "What do you do at Christmas time?" Patrick addressed the class, "Well, miss, me and my 12 brothers and sisters go to midnight mass and we sing hymns. Then we come home very late and we put mince pies by the back door and hang up our stockings. Then all excited, we go to bed and wait for Father Christmas to come with all our toys." "Very nice, Patrick," she said. "Now, Jimmy Brown, what do you do at Christmas?" "Well, miss, me and my sister also go to church with Mom and Dad, and we sing carols, and we get home ever so late. We put chocolate biscuits and milk by the chimney, and we hang up our stockings. We hardly sleep waiting for Santa to bring our presents." Realizing there was a Jewish boy in the class, and not wanting to leave him out of the discussion, she asked, "Now, Isaac Cohen, what do you do at Christmas?" Isaac said, "Well, it's the same thing every year, miss. Dad comes home from the office. We all pile into the Rolls Royce. Then we drive to Dad's toy factory. When we get inside, we look at all the empty shelves and sing, 'What a friend we have in Jesus.' Then we all go to the Bahamas." So Christmas was coming, and little Johnny's mom and dad took him to the mall to see Santa Claus. Johnny walked up and sat on Santa's lap and said, "Santa, for Christmas, I want a goddamn new baseball bat, and I want it to be put under my goddamn bed. I want a goddamn new baseball glove, and I want it put under the goddamn Christmas tree. And Santa, I want a goddamn new bike, and I want it put under a goddamn tarp in the goddamn shed." Santa, in complete shock, pulled little Johnny's parents aside and said, "In all my years, I have never seen a little boy with such a foul mouth." His parents replied, "We know, but we have no idea what to do about his behavior. We've tried everything." Santa thought about it and said, "Here's what we'll do to teach him a lesson. Every place that Johnny asked for a present, we'll put a pile of dog poop." The parents agreed to try Santa's plan. On Christmas morning, little Johnny woke up and immediately looked under his bed. Seeing the pile of poop, he ran downstairs to the Christmas tree and checked underneath. Finding another pile of poop under the tree, he ran out the door and threw open the shed door. Finding a tarp in the shed, he quickly pulled back the tarp and found yet another pile of poop. Johnny walked out of the shed and started looking all around the yard. After a while, his parents asked him sarcastically, "So, little Johnny, what did you get for Christmas?" Without missing a beat, Johnny looked at his parents and said, "I think I got a goddamn dog, but I can't find the bastard." So as a 17-year-old young man walked into the drugstore, he was filled with excitement and nerves. He had recently started dating a new girl and had been invited to her house for Christmas dinner. As he approached the counter, he turned to the clerk and said, "I've been invited to Christmas dinner at my new girlfriend's house. Afterwards, I hope there is a chance I get lucky. You know what I mean." The clerk, understanding the young man's intentions, suggested he buy some condoms and handed him a pack. The young man paid for them and walked to the door, but then stopped and turned around with a smile on his face. He came back to the counter and said, "You know what? The mom is also smoking hot. I think I'll take another pack, just in case I get extra lucky." Christmas Eve arrived, and the young man found himself sitting at the dinner table, surrounded by his girlfriend's family. He was so nervous and excited that he couldn't even speak. After a while, his girlfriend turned to him and said, "If I had known you were so quiet, I wouldn't have invited you." The young man, feeling embarrassed, replied, "If you had told me your dad works at a drugstore, I wouldn't have come." So after 20 years of marriage, Louise was upset her husband Tom never bought her a Christmas gift. She was so upset, she told him she wanted to see a marriage counselor. The counselor asked Tom why he never bought Louise a Christmas gift. "I did. I bought her a gift the first year we were married," he said. "Well, why have you never gotten her one since?" the counselor asked. "I told her I'd get her another one when she used the first one I got her. She hasn't used it yet," he said. Counselor looked at Louise, who was staring at the floor. "What did you get her?" the counselor asked. "A cemetery plot." So 3 men died on Christmas Eve and were met by St. Peter at the pearly gates. "To enter the gates of heaven," he declared, "you must each present an item that symbolizes Christmas." The Englishman, eager to prove his worth, reached into his pockets and produced a lighter. He flicked it on and proclaimed, "It's a candle." St. Peter, pleased with the man's resourcefulness, allowed him to pass through the pearly gates. Next, the Scotsman rummaged through his pockets and retrieved a set of keys. He shook them vigorously and announced, "They're bells." Again, St. Peter was satisfied and granted the Scotsman passage into heaven. Finally, the Irishman, in a state of growing anxiety, frantically searched his pockets. At last, he found a pair of women's panties. St. Peter, with a raised eyebrow, inquired, "And just what do those symbolize?" The Irishman, without missing a beat, replied, "These are carols." So a group of married couples get together for a Christmas dinner. When the last couple arrives, the wife is immediately showing off her present from her husband. "Look at what my Harold bought me," she exclaims as she holds up her hand with a diamond the size of a baseball on it. All the other wives gather around her, complimenting her over her new ring. One of the other husbands whispers to Harold, "I thought she wanted a new car." "She did," answers Harold, "but I don't know where to buy a fake Mercedes." So one lovely Christmas Eve, a couple were getting some last-minute gifts at a packed shopping mall. As the wife was looking at some items, in a window, She was surprised to look up and see her husband was nowhere around. She quickly became concerned because they still had so much to prepare for the big day. The wife pulled out her phone and gave her husband a call. In a very calm voice, the husband told her, "Baby, do you remember the jewelry store we went into about 5 years ago where you fell in love with that beautiful diamond necklace that we couldn't quite afford at the time? And I told you that I would get it for you one day." The wife was breathless for a moment and replied, "Yes, honey, I remember that jewelry store." The husband said, "Well, I'm having a beer in the bar right next to it." So, a young man called Chris from London wanted to buy a Christmas present for his new girlfriend. They hadn't been seeing each other for very long, and she lived in Scotland. Chris consulted with his sister and decided, after careful consideration, that a pair of good quality gloves would strike the right note. Not too romantic and not too personal. Off he went with his sister to Harrods, and they selected a dainty pair of fur-lined quality leather gloves. His sister bought a pair of sexy knickers for herself at the same time. Harrods had a free gift wrap offer, but the assistant mixed up the two items. The sister got the gloves, and Chris unknowingly got the knickers. Good old Chris sent off his gift-wrapped present in a parcel with the following letter. "Dear Maggie, I chose these because I've noticed that you are not wearing any when we go out in the evenings. If it had not been for my sister, I would have chosen the long ones with buttons, but she wears shorter ones, which are easier to remove. These are a very delicate shade, but the lady I bought them from showed me the pair she had been wearing for the past 3 weeks, and I hardly noticed any marks. I had her try yours on for me, and she looked really smart in them even though they were a little bit tight on her. She also said that they rub against her ring, which helps keep it clean. In fact, she hasn't needed to wash it since she began wearing them. I wish I was there to put them on for you the first time, as no doubt many other hands will touch them before I have a chance to see you again. When you take them off, remember to blow into them a little bit because they will be naturally a little damp from wearing. Just imagine how many times my lips will kiss them during the coming year. I hope you will wear them for me on our next date. All my love, Chris. By the way, my mom tells me that the latest style is to wear them folded down with a little bit of fur showing." So, Henry woke up after the annual office Christmas party with a fantastic headache, cotton-mouthed, and completely unable to recall the events of the night before. He made his way downstairs and his wife put some coffee in front of him. "Olivia," he moaned, "tell me what happened last night. Was it as bad as I think?" "No, it was worse," she said, her voice full of scorn. "You made a complete ass of yourself. You succeeded in antagonizing the entire board of directors, and you insulted the company president right to his face." "He's an arsehole," Henry said. "Piss on him." "You did," she replied. "And then he fired you." "Well, screw him," said Henry. "I did," his wife answered. "You're back at work on Monday." So, a child from a poor family wanted a bike for Christmas, so he asked his mother. His mother replied, "Well, we can't afford one, so you'll just have to go ask the baby, Jesus." The boy went to his room, got a stack of refill and a pen, and began writing. "Dear baby, Jesus, I've been good all year. Can you please give me a bike for Christmas?" Then he looked at it and thought maybe that wasn't entirely true, so he tried again. "Dear baby Jesus, I've been good for the past week. Can you please give me a bike for Christmas?" Then he looked at it again and still wasn't sure if that was true, so he tried yet again. "Dear baby Jesus, if you give me a bike, I'll be good all year. But even then, that seemed too hard, so he took a walk outside to think about it. As he was walking, he saw his neighbor's statue of Mother Mary. The boy hopped over the fence, tucked it under his shoulder, and ran home to hide it. Then wrote his letter again. Dear baby Jesus, if you ever want to see your mother again, give me a bite. So, the Presbyterian Church called a meeting to decide what to do about their squirrel infestation. After much prayer and consideration, they concluded that the squirrels were predestined to be there, and they should not interfere with God's divine will. At the Baptist church, the squirrels had taken an interest in the baptistry. The deacons met and decided to put a water slide on the baptistry and let the squirrels drown themselves. The squirrels liked the slide and, unfortunately, knew instinctively how to swim, so twice as many squirrels showed up the following week. The Lutheran Church decided that they were not in a position to harm any of God's creatures. So, they humanely trapped their squirrels and set them free near the Baptist church. 2 weeks later, the squirrels were back when the Baptists took down the water slide. The Episcopalians tried a much more unique path by setting out pans of whiskey around their church in an effort to kill the squirrels with alcohol poisoning. They sadly learned how much damage a band of drunk squirrels can do. But the Catholic Church came up with a more creative strategy. They baptized all the squirrels and made them members of the church. Now they only see them at Christmas and Easter. So one Christmas Eve, a frenzied young man ran into a pet shop looking for an unusual Christmas gift for his wife. The shop owner suggested a parrot named Chet, which could sing famous Christmas carols. This seemed like the perfect gift. How do I get him to sing? The young man asked, excitedly. Simply hold a lighted match directly under his feet, was the shop owner's reply. The shop owner held a lighted match under the parrot's left foot. Chet began to sing, "Jingle bells, jingle bells." The shop owner then held another match under the parrot's right foot. Then Chet's tune changed, and the air was filled with singing, "Silent night, holy night." The young man was so impressed that he paid the shopkeeper and ran home as quickly as he could with Chet under his arm. When the wife saw her gift, she was overwhelmed. "How beautiful," she exclaimed. "Can he talk?" "No," the young man replied, "but he can sing." "Let me show you." So the young man whipped out his lighter and placed it under Chet's left foot, as the shopkeeper had shown him, and the bird sang jingle bells. Jingle bells. The man then moved the lighter to Chet's right foot, and the bird started singing, "Silent night, holy night." The wife, her face filled with curiosity, then asked, "What he hold the lighter beneath both feet?" The man did not know. "Let's try it," he answered, eager to please his wife. So they held the lighter between Chet's legs. Chet twisted his face, cleared his throat, and the little parrot sang out loudly like it was the performance of his life. "Chet's nuts roasting on an open fire." So on Christmas Eve, Nathan thought it would be nice to buy his wife a little gift for the next day. Always short of money, he thought long and hard about what that present might be. Unable to decide, Nathan entered Debenhams, and in the cosmetics section, he asked the girl, "How about some perfume?" She showed him a bottle costing $75. "Too expensive," muttered Nathan. The young lady returned with a smaller bottle for $50. "Oh dear," Nathan groused, still far too much. Growing rather annoyed at Nathan's meanness, the salesgirl brought out a tiny $10 bottle and offered it to him. Nathan became really agitated. "What I mean," he whined, "is I'd like to see something really cheap." So the salesgirl handed him a mirror. So, 3 men tragically died in a car accident and found themselves at the pearly gates. St. Peter told them, "You may be glad to know that, because there aren't a lot of people qualifying for admission these days. We've lowered the standards. Just tell me the meaning of Easter, and you're in." The first guy says, "Easter is when we decorate a tree, sing carols, and Santa brings us presents." St. Peter says, "That's Christmas. You go to hell." The second guy says, "Easter is when we have a parade, have picnics, politicians, make speeches. At night, we shoot off fireworks." St. Peter groaned. "That's not even a religious holiday. That's American Independence Day. You go with the other guy." The third man solemnly intoned, "The story of Easter is how our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, was crucified on the cross. He suffered, died, and was put in the tomb, and a great stone rolled across the entrance. But on the third day, Easter morning, he rose from the dead. The stone was rolled away, and Jesus came out, saw his shadow, and we had 6 more weeks of winter." So an old man calls his son and says, "Listen, your mother and I are getting a divorce. 45 years of misery is enough." "Dad, what are you talking about?" The son screams. "We can't stand the sight of each other any longer," he says. "I'm sick of her face, and I'm sick of talking about this. So call your sister and tell her," and he hangs up. Now, the son is worried. He calls his sister. She says, like hell they're getting divorced. She calls their father immediately. "You're not getting divorced. Don't do another thing. The 2 of us are flying home tomorrow to talk about this. Until then, don't call a lawyer. Don't file a paper. Do you hear me?" She hangs up the phone. The old man turns to his wife and says, "Okay, they're both coming for Christmas and paying their own airfares." So Rick had dedicated a quarter of a century to a demanding career in law enforcement, where the daily grind was filled with tension and stress. After reaching a breaking point, he made a bold decision. He handed in his badge and acquired a remote 50-acre piece of land deep within the wilds of Alaska, far away from the bustling clamor of civilization. In his new life, the postman's visits became a weekly highlight, and trips to the grocery store occurred just once a month. Otherwise, tranquility reigned supreme in his rustic retreat. For nearly 6 months, Rick reveled in almost complete isolation, finding solace in the symphony of nature and the solitude that had long eluded him. However, as the days passed, a peculiar sense of loneliness began to creep in, making him yearn for some semblance of human interaction. Then one fateful day, a knock resounded through his remote cabin. Startled, Rick opened the door to find a towering, bearded man standing on his doorstep. The stranger introduced himself as Cliff, the nearest neighbor residing a whopping 40 miles up the winding road. With a warm, welcoming smile, Cliff extended an invitation that would change Rick's life for the foreseeable future. "Name's Cliff, your neighbor from 40 miles up the road, having a Christmas party Friday night. Thought you might like to come at about 5. Rick's eyes lit up with newfound hope. "Great," he replied. "After 6 months out here, I'm ready to meet some local folks. Thank you." As Cliff prepared to depart, he paused for a moment, as if deliberating. "Gotta warn you, be some drinking." Rick, drawing from his 2.5 decades of law enforcement experience, grinned confidently. "Not a problem. After 25 years in the business, I can drink with the best of them." Once more, The big man hesitated, his eyes locking onto Rick's. More than likely gonna be some fighting too. With a chuckle, Rick shrugged off the concern. Well, I get along with people. I'll be all right. I'll be there. Thanks again. Cliff took one more moment, a sly grin crossing his face. More than likely be some wild sex, too. Rick's initial astonishment quickly turned into excitement. Now that's really not a problem, he declared. His curiosity piqued. I've been all alone for 6 months. I'll definitely be there. By the way, what should I wear? Chuckling, Cliff leaned in and whispered, Don't much matter. Just gonna be the two of us. So a family is at the dinner table. The son asks his father, Dad, how many kinds of breasts are there? The father, surprised, answers, Well, son, there are 3 kinds of breasts. In her 20s, a woman's breasts are like melons, round and firm. In her 30s to 40s, they are like pears, still nice, but hanging a bit. After 50, they are like onions. Onions? Yes, you see them and they make you cry. This infuriated his wife and daughter, so the daughter asked, Mom, how many kinds of willies are there? The mother, surprised, smiles and answers, Well, dear, a man goes through 3 phases. In his 20s, his willie is like an oak tree, mighty and hard. In his 30s and 40s, it is like a birch, flexible but reliable. After his 50s, it is like a Christmas tree. A Christmas tree? Yes, dead from the root up, and the balls are just for decoration. So a father asked his 10-year-old son if he knew about the birds and the bees. I don't want to know, the child said, bursting into tears. Promise me you won't tell me. Confused, the father asked what was wrong. The boy sobbed. When I was 6, I got the "there's no Easter bunny" speech. At 7, I got the "there's no tooth fairy" speech. When I was 8, you hit me with the "there's no Santa" speech. If you're going to tell me that grown-ups don't really root, I'll have nothing left to live for.